know what incredible pressure everyone is under at the moment, and we really want to deliver some great value for everyone. And obviously, there's, you know, we have to make clear there's no silver bullets with this unprecedented situation that we're dealing with. But you know, with the right principles, the right approach, and the right attitude, I think, you know, we can all find the opportunities to make the best of the situation, and to obviously you know, keep fundraising. So yes, my name's Joe Morrison. I run a consultancy called Craft and Scale, and I work with a number of non-profits on building their strategies, working on insight, working on innovation, and yeah, and so it's great to talk to you today, and I'm really pleased that we've got Sonya with us today, and she's one of the fundraisers that I most respect, and, you know, one of the people that when all this is happening, I like to keep in touch with, because I know she'll be doing interesting things and she'll be doing the right things, and it's those kind of you know, right approaches that I want to talk about today and hopefully share with all of you. So yes, thank you. So are we ready to move on to the next slide, Vanessa, if we could do so? Yeah, what we're going to talk about today is you know, how do we use insight to drive our planning and our strategy, and how do we move on to the next stage? I know so many of you are keen to do, getting out of the emergency phase, or at least starting to see like what's going to be next. And I wondered, Sonya, if you could maybe just talk to us briefly about what's happened with you, what's been your experience resetting, re-evaluating fundraising goals. You know, your annual plan suddenly feels like it goes out of the window when COVID-19 strikes and we go into lockdown and everything else. So can you just talk to us about that and about what your experience has been and what approach you've taken?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So the first thing I want to say actually is that I'm conscious within this group of people that are watching this, that there will be some of you that are, you know, working your socks off like you've never worked before. There will be people that are furloughed, that are going through, you know, we're all going through our own issues, aren't we? And there'll be people that are lone fundraisers, there'll be people that are part of, you know, really big fundraising machines. You know, we're all in a different scenario. So I'm going to use examples from Samaritans to showcase a few things, but you know, I'm trying to be conscious that you're all in different scenarios. So I hope that some of that comes through, but please do bear with me. So Samaritans, some of you will know us. We are an organisation that is there for suicide prevention. We're best known for our emotional support line. So we offer support 24/7 for people facing emotional crisis. And as you can imagine, right now we are needed just as much as ever. So when this crisis started unfolding, what was important was that we could continue to be there 24/7. And as you can imagine, so we have 20,000 volunteers. Many of them are over 70. Some will have underlying health conditions. We deliver our service from 201 branches. We had to think about how we could continue to deliver that. So that was the first thing. And I'm delighted that we're being able to maintain a 24/7 service right now. But coupled with that, we needed to make sure that we had the financial stability to continue running that service. So we did two things very, very quickly. So we came together as an income leadership team, and the first thing we did was we did our sensitivity analysis of all our income. So we RAG rated it all. And the thing why we did it in that way is because what I tell you today about our income versus tomorrow versus next week are three different answers. And that is going to continue to play out. You know, we've heard now that we officially that we are in recession. So we're going to continue to see things play out. Alongside that, we scenario planned. So if we were to have a drop in income of say 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, what would we do to maintain our service? We then have a fortnightly meeting with our treasurer, who's been exceptional during this period, to understand where we are with our income and our expenditure. So, you know, you'll experience having monthly management accounts. We've had to find a way of producing fortnightly accounts so we can make that assessment. The other thing we did was we looked at the whole fundraising program and we reshaped. So we needed to understand what we would do in this crisis, but also look at the mid and long term. But what has been central throughout all of that is that we must continue asking. That is absolutely vital. So I'll talk to you about the longer term bits in another slide. But what we did was when we looked at how we were reshaping, we simply fast-tracked some of our plans. So we didn't lose sight of our fundraising strategy. So those things still stand. And a lot of these things that will be in your strategies. Things like being insight-led, innovation, test and learn, putting the donor at the centre. So to give you an example, you'll see these images on the screen. So on the left-hand side, this is our Brew Monday event, you know, traditional bucket shaking event. You know, they're not happening. So Stream for Samaritans, we soft launched it in April. Now, last year, in the summertime, we had someone called Ollie come to us, and he said to us, I've used your service in the past, I want to do some fundraising for you. I want to live stream the full works of Shakespeare. Okay, so he said, right, I think I can raise about £3,000 from this. So we started talking to him, understood his audience, understood how he's going to do it. He came back and he said, and when we reassessed and we thought, actually, you could probably raise about £10,000 from this. Anyway, he raised a whopping £109,000. I mean, wow, it was just incredible. So since that time, we've been picking this up anyway, in terms of a trend coming through from our audiences. So we knew we wanted to do some work on this. So we have been working on this for the last year. We've looked at technology, and we, like I say, we soft launched Stream for Samaritans in April. We're using technology Tiltify. And what we did was we would have launched it a bit later, but we've had to fast track our decision making and really think about how we would have done more test and learn, but we've just had to get it out there. So on to the next slide, I think.
So yeah, so the way I've been looking at this is, you know, we're very much in a Dunkirk situation at the moment. You know, as organisations, we're scrabbling around, trying to find those ways to salvage what best we can in the short term of a very difficult situation. So, you know, it's a highly stressful time. It's very responsive. It's put us all under enormous pressure, and it's an incredibly inefficient way of working. But to be clear, it's absolutely necessary to do this. We've all had to do it. We've had to find new ways of working. We've had to try and see what can we salvage from you know, existing fundraising campaigns or products that may have changed drastically or can't happen at all. What kind of new opportunities, you know, can we do, like the 2.6 challenge? It's an incredibly stressful situation, and what we want to know is, like, how do we move to D-Day? How do we get to that strategic, planned, focused activity that is based on long-term, you know, vision? You know, D-Day was the platform for how we won the war, and what we want to know is, like, how do we move on from this situation where we're in this very reactive mode and get to a point where we can start planning at a time when it's more difficult to plan the future, it's more difficult to understand what's going on, it's more difficult to know what's changing than ever before. So that's the question that we're trying to answer. But I think it's really important to underline that it's very, very important that you as organizations consciously try and make that transition, because there will often be a tendency to stay in the Dunkirk mode and to feel like we've got to keep busy, we've got to try every opportunity and everything we can do, and we've got to try and reach everybody. But ultimately, not only will it be incredibly inefficient to do that and a poor use of resource, but it will also burn everybody out. And I think, and I know that Sonya is very, very keen to talk about well-being, and with her team and what she's doing and what we need to do as a sector is looking out for each other and looking after ourselves. It's important that we don't stay in this mode forever. And that means that the leadership, and if you're running a team, is to consciously think, I have to shift resource into thinking and planning and looking at the longer term, even when that longer term is quite uncertain. I wonder, Sonya, maybe if you could just talk, just give us an example of each of those, of where you've done something quite quick and tactical, and then also what you've been able to maintain in the past few weeks of your strategic planning that you've been able to continue doing.
Okay, so for us, one of the things that we knew that we needed to do was set up an emergency appeal. We, as a domestic organisation, we don't have experience of doing emergency appeals. So we quite quickly needed to look at the rest of the sector to understand what best practice looks like. But going back to insight, that was really, really important as well. So we know from our Christmas appeal that we did recently, our March appeal, that there were certain things that we needed to hold on to. So for example, the story being central, the acquisition channels that were working for us. So we're able to set up our emergency appeal within a couple of weeks. We're into phase 2 of that now, so lots of activities within that. And we have continued to adopt a test and learn approach to this unfolding, so we can just learn more. But that is very, very tactical in terms of what we're delivering. In terms of the D-Day for us, so if we think, and we probably don't want to be thinking about Christmas right now, but we knew that we needed to continue with our plans for Christmas. Christmas is a really important time for us at Samaritans. Christmas is a time when people can feel lonely, they can feel the pressure of keeping up, financial worries, family issues. We take a lot of calls. It's a really important time for fundraising for us. And I think this year will be no exception. If anything, I think there will be even more demand for us. So what was important was that we kept our fundraising plans going for Christmas, and we were in the middle of looking for an agency, creative agency. We'd got our shortlist, we were about to do pitches. So for the very first time, we had agencies pitching to us virtually via Zoom, and I must say that agencies really stepped up. They were incredible, and also our team organised a really good process, much like the team here have organised this great event. People have really stepped up, and that was really important, that we could do that and keep the show on the road for us for Christmas. So I think next slide.
Thank you, Sonya. Yeah, I think that's really important, what you were talking about there, about finding that way to keep the agency pitches going, and maintain that normality, but just do it in a different way. So how do we move on strategically? Well, it's important to cut out the urgent noise, which you'll have in every organization, and start looking at what's going on in the outside world and try and find those trends and understand what's happening. There's so many freely available sources of information out there. We've listed a few here on the slide. There's some really interesting trackers, NFP Synergy and YouGov, looking at, there's a lot of there on donations, but also much wider trends on COVID. Opinium has some good stuff on brands and how brands are responding, which is very useful for corporate fundraising, understanding what do corporations need to do to position themselves correctly in response to this crisis, and how can you play a part, as a partner for them. You might be surprised, things like the ONS, they don't just look at things like population, and they also look at anxiety levels. So these are all useful things. It's important to look at that, and freely available information. There's so much of it out there. And obviously, continue to invest in insight. If you're able to, conduct primary research, and I do a lot of projects like this with my clients at the moment. We're trying to understand what's happening with supporters, both like in their charity relationships, but also much more widely what else they're doing. It's, you know, from what I'm seeing at the moment, there was obviously a big cutback in donations very early on in the lockdown period. And it's really interesting to see with some of the charities I speak to, it can often come from different places. Some people have found they're more affluent supporters, being quite financially savvy and cutting back. Others have had people who've had kind of lower social grade people withdraw support because they don't have the means anymore. It really depends on your base, but I would say that the really key thing that's coming out is the people who are very close to a cause are the people who are staying loyal. And it's really important that, and we'll talk more about this in a moment, about focusing on those and identifying who has that really strong affinity with you, because they're the ones who are going to see you through this. And it's important to look at not just donations, but how their household spending is happening more broadly as well. And people are cutting back very, very significantly on household spending. But it seems like in the last few weeks that donations are holding up quite well at the moment for a lot of charities. But we know what's coming down the track is, you know, a very hard recession. There are going to be job losses. So it's all about pulling that information in and planning for that. And I think there's been some very interesting moves with high value supporters recently, you know, with corporates and major donors. Some amazing gifts have been going out, and there are, you know, big opportunities there. People want to be, organizations and high value donors, they want to be doing something. So that is a key space to be exploring at the moment. I think, Sonya, you wanted to mention something about reaching out kind of beyond your normal comfort zone and asking for help in situations like this.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, what if someone was to say to me, you know, what are you good at, Sonya? I'd probably say asking for help. And, you know, I worked at the Red Cross 20 years ago. This week I've been in touch with 3 colleagues from those days to ask for different things. You know, I pride myself on building networks, you know, attending events like this physically when you're able to. But there are, you know, our sector is brilliant at this, offering out information. You know, if you ask for help, you will probably find somewhere to get it. So please really do not feel like you're alone during this time. You know, do reach out to people. I think that's really, really important.
Thank you. If we can move on to the next slide. And what we're going to talk about here is like, how do we start to build that strategic response, and obviously in the context of insight to inform your planning. So the key part of this really for me is about really tightening up your targeting. And there will be a lot of pressure on many fundraisers at the moment to try and reach as many people as you can, try and be as big as you can. And I'd really kind of caution against doing that. You need to reach to the people who have your strongest affinity with you, who are going to stay loyal and really understand your cause and really work and keep those people very close to you. I know there's going to be pressure. I feel like if you think back about 10 years or so, I know that every funder has been asked, like, can we create the new ice bucket challenge? Like, what's our version of that? And I kind of fear that we're all going to be asked now to, like, you know, give me a Captain Tom. What's our equivalent that we can just pull out of thin air and solve all our problems? And it's just not going to happen. It's about finding those really strong audiences for you, understanding them really holistically. So it's not just about, you know, are they donating and how much they donate. It's understanding what's going on in their wider life. What are their needs? What is it that, you know, what values and attitudes do they have that really match with your cause, and that you can create deep relationships with, that you can give something back to, you can meet their needs beyond just making them feel good about making a donation. So this is why it's important to really invest in understanding audiences better, invest in insight, and use it from all sources. It's not just about things like primary market research. It's about using the data that you've got, testing and learning continuously, using all sources, or just making, you know, the effort yourself to go and speak to supporters or potential supporters, and really get to know them as people. The other point I want to make is about not just kind of throwing out ideas. So look for kind of territories that you can explore. Don't think about, oh, we have an idea, we tried it once and it didn't work. What you should be doing is identifying an audience that you can, you know, grow with or sustain your income with, and thinking like, what are all the ways we can engage with them, and what are all the things we can do to test, and think of it more as an exploration of continuous learning rather than, oh, let's just try ideas, and particularly not random ideas. It's got to be led by insight. Maybe Sonya, could you talk about, we've got some examples on the screen there, but like how you have engaged with your audiences, and what you're doing to continue that kind of strategic insight approach?
Yeah, so if you look on the right hand side, you'll see a couple of panels. Active grandparents are starting out. So they are two of the personas that we have. So we have built 5 personas. So these are representations of real people who will engage with us. And we've done a lot of work on this, and we always go back to these personas when we're looking at our fundraising. And in building those, what we've been able to do is really understand a lot about them. So, you know, things like, you know, what are the emotional drivers, the brands that they support, their attitudes to mental health, you know, the tone of voice they like to be spoken to, the media preferences they have, how they spend their time. And what's important is that we keep you know, these profiles aren't static. We keep working on them to really understand the audience, keep having those deep conversations with them. And right now, those profiles are going to really be changing. We just need to keep asking and finding out more about them. So we've got these 2 examples. But then the other thing is about the asking. So we have a supporter panel, and what we do is we go to them with various questions about, you know, new products that we may have or our messaging. We've got just over 1,000 people that are part of that panel. And so another thing that we fast tracked is our Feel Good Book Club. So this is a book club which focuses on well-being, and we've asked them about this product, and again we've been able to fast track that. We typically, when we put out questions to our panel, we usually get about a 15 to 20% response rate. So that those responses are really able to help us shape the delivery of our programme. I think that's everything.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sonya. If we could just move on to the next slide, Vanessa. Because what we wanted to do is just bring in a few examples also from other charities as well. And what I wanted to focus on was those who are adapting their strategy rather than changing the strategy. So one of the people I've been speaking to is Tracy Pritchard, who heads up fundraising at Prostate Cancer UK. That's an organisation that really takes insight seriously. Tracy describes her insight team as the engine room of her fundraising. And what they have done is, you know, they've taken their strap line, which is like "Men, we're with you," which is based on insight. It's based on what they know about men in that situation with prostate cancer, how they want to feel supported and celebrated, and what she's, you know, doing in response to COVID-19 is she's really invested in relationships, and she's really driven, like, we need to optimize our strongest relationships. We need to keep, you know, with the same insight, with the same audiences, but we just need to adapt it to changing circumstances. And I think, Sonya, you've talked to me before about how you're doing something similar about adapting ideas or bringing forward ideas rather than just creating stuff out of thin air. And I think that's a really appropriate way to do it. Another organisation that's been doing this really well in COVID-19 is Save the Children. So one of the things that I was doing, oh God, about 10 years ago now, was investigating like how that as a charity could move into the family space, and how it could be targeting a slightly younger audience, and give them a lot more value back through engaging them with them as parents and as families and children in the UK, rather than just kind of being a very transactional kind of donate and feel good relationship. So it's really interesting to see like how they built that proposition up over the last decade. And now if you see what they're, you know, making very prominent now on their website, it's, you know, it's about all this kind of content around storytelling with your children and doing activities with your children. You know, they've got great content, they've got great partnerships, and they've been able to adapt that and recycle that work in the face of the situation very, very swiftly. So it's very, very impressive, and it shows that they have a real mutual relationship with their partners in this space. And so I think, yes, it's really about like not losing sight of those growth audiences. It's, you know, the audience that was going to be there for you to grow your fundraising at the start of the year is almost certainly still going to be that same prime audience for you. It's just about understanding like, well, how are they as an audience responding to COVID-19? What are their needs now? Some of them will be continuous ones that you already knew, and some of them will be new in response to changing situations. But by keeping, you know, keeping very close to them and continue to explore and test with them, you know, that is how you'll see your way through it. And it's just, as I said before, it's about keeping that really tight focus and not trying to appeal to everybody, but just really understand your core audiences in depth, whether they're with you now or whether they're a growth audience that you want to, you know, you want to grow with. Is there anything, Sonya, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. So I think, you know, again, at the essence, we must remember our mission. You know, we're all here to do different things, but that remains. So for us, it's that fewer people die by suicide. So it's continuing to hold on to that. And I think that the other thing is that stewardship is so important right now. You know, we as I said, you know, the motto is keep asking. You know, out of 160,000 odd charities that people can support, they chose to support you. There's a reason why they did that. They either did it because of your product, the experience you offer, their connection to the cause. So you might not be a charity delivering, you know, frontline services in response to this crisis, but people, they care about you as a cause. So, you know, really connect with your donors, you know, your potential donors, keep the mission at the core, you know, tell them about how you're affected in this crisis. Ask them, you know, what are you looking for right now? How do you want to support? You know, we saw that data earlier in the week from YouGov that on the 17th of April, 8% of people considered giving. You know, at the 27th of May, it was at 14%. You know, so do continue to keep that asking going.
Thank you. If we just go to the last slide, Vanessa, or the next slide. So yeah, this is summarised everything. We wanted to keep this presentation quite short and sweet because we know there'll be questions, there'll be different areas that people want to focus on. I think it'd be good to get perspective from the wider group today. But to summarise what Sonya and I feel, actually maybe Sonya, do you want to start with this? Maybe talk about the first few on this slide.
Yeah, so, you know, I think I just said this, you know, about the mission being absolutely central in everything that you do. That's key. For us, again, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. You know, we really try and get that into the DNA of our programme. So, you know, dust down those learnings that you've had from the past, refamiliarise yourself with what works for you in terms of moving forward. I think that's important.
I think there was also, you know, related to what you were saying before about asking others and learning from others. And I know that many charities like yourselves have looked to you know, international development and what they already know from years and years of doing emergency appeals. And it's great to see that those techniques being used now, redeployed in such, you know, a variety of ways. And yeah, I really like that expression about dust down your learnings. I think the, you know, go back to stewardship, go back to relationship building, and find those things that were working for you, and be insight led, basically. I think we've got a point here about keep investing in that holistic understanding of your audiences. As I say, don't see them just as donors, just see them as people. What's going on in their lives? What do they need that you can help them with? You know, emotional needs, social needs, functional needs. This is a really useful way of looking at audiences. Be judicious. I guess probably if there's one point I really want to make today, it's like really make sure that you make the best of your biggest and best resource, which is your people. So find that focus. Being judicious with your targeting helps you do that. It will keep people sane. It will keep them focused. It will stop teams from burning out. So really make sure that you make hard choices and say, look, if you're not making decisions on cutting things that you'd really love to do, but you just can't, then you're not targeting properly. You're not doing it effectively. So make those harder choices. And it's been interesting to see how much decision making has sped up in many organizations over the past few weeks. And just think about how sometimes we stall over ideas and we stall over new opportunities, because we take 18 months to make a decision when actually we could be making those decisions. We have enough information to make those decisions. So yeah, try and tighten that up and think about collaboration. There's already been some good examples of this. Actually, Sonia, do you want to maybe talk about collaboration a little bit?
Yeah, so it may come up in the questions, but just to say, you know, collaboration is really important right now. You know, we've been doing that. We've been working with a lot of mental health charities. To be honest, it's taken us out of our comfort zone, but you know, we're getting really strong results from that. And I think as we go into renewal, the renewal phase, the recovery phase, we're going to need more collaboration. So really try and get out of your comfort zone on this bit, because that I think is going to really help. I suppose for me, the last couple of points are, you know, be brave, be unique, but also be kind. You know, we are fundraisers. We work really hard to ensure that our organisations can keep going, that we're focusing on our missions. You'll be working really hard right now. You'll have a lot going on for you personally. You know, be kind, look after yourself, look after your health, look after your well-being. Reach out to those around you. It's really important that we can sustain ourselves, because we know that this road is going to be long, and fundraising is difficult at the best of times. And I suppose the last thing, and you know, I am a proud fundraiser, and it wouldn't be right if I didn't end with keep asking.
Thanks, Sonia. That's a really good way to wrap up, I think, or at least for this first section. I think what we'll do, we'll hand over to the committee so we can open up to the Q&A. And just before we do so, just to say thank you so much, everyone, for engaging today and taking part. And I hope you've taken something from it that's of use. And you know, both Sonia and myself are contactable. And if you want to continue the conversation after the session, you know, more than willing to engage with anybody. And I believe there's a group being set up by the committee as well to talk specifically about COVID-19 response and where we move next. So I'm sure they can give some details about that. But yeah, thank you very much. And I'll hand over to our hosts.
Thanks, Joe and Sonia, that was amazing. I'm sure we've all taken lots away from that. So, right, we're going over to Q&A section now. I can see all the questions pouring through. But I thought, first and foremost, it'd be really good. I saw at the start lots of people asking about the poll. So if Vanessa, you can bring the poll results up on the screen for everyone to initially see. that would be fab. And then I think, so we can see at the moment 55% people balancing immediate priorities and strategies is the key thing people want to hear about. But I know lots of you didn't get a chance to answer that poll. So Vanessa, let's rerun it. If everyone wants to have a quick revote, because I know there's probably about there's double the amount of people online right now, just to make sure we're still on track with the same discussion area. That would be fab. Oh, it's still looking like the immediate priorities and strategies in the lead. Another job for me, becoming a commentator. Okay, we're getting there. Keep them coming, guys. We're nearly there. Lovely. Well, I think that's still going to be the clear winner by the looks of things. Okay, well, and that's fab. That's really great to see that that's still coming through. So thanks everybody for that. So it's still in that balancing immediate priorities and strategy, Joe and Sonya. I'm just going to read out some of the questions that have come through. They're coming through thick and fast. So first of all, we've had quite a few questions about balancing financially, for like they're okay for the short term, but I think we all know we're in this for the long haul. So how do you start planning for mid to long term financial positions? Because they really don't want to start having to dig into their reserve pot. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I think from my perspective, I suppose it goes back to what I said earlier. It's looking at that scenario planning alongside your looking at your finances right now. So if you can, as an organisation, really think about, okay, well, if we were to take a hit in income of X amount and then build that out and understand how you could continue to deliver based on those scenarios, I think that's going to be key to things, because if you can continually track and understand, how your income is declining, then you can work out how you can continue to deliver your services. And there are going to be some really, really tough decisions. And I think one of the things is that, in the early part of this crisis, we may have thought, oh, well, let's understand what happened with the 2008 recession. We know that it's very, very different. So I, would sort of caution against that, and just keep that assessment going. I think the other thing is it's, understanding, getting the whole of your organisation behind income generation. So we know that with some of our organisations, fundraising, we're not fundraising first. There are some good examples in the sector, but I think there are only a few actually. So this is your time when you need to be influencing. You need to be talking to your trustees. You need to be talking to your executive team. You need to be talking to your colleagues about why fundraising is so important right now, and really get them behind what you're doing to keep that income generation going.
I think that's great, Sonya. If I could just, maybe just a couple of thoughts to add to it. I think one is like working out the time for your organisation, like where you're going to deploy it. So basically everyone's in a bad situation, and that's unavoidable. What you can control is the time that you deploy and where you deploy it. So work out, where is it going to be most effective for you to use the time of your teams and your staff, your personnel and your volunteers, and make sure that to give yourselves the best chance, you're putting it in the right places and that you're not deploying it where it's going to be least effective. And then related to that, then obviously is the insight and the audience questions, like where does that need to be focused? And I think it's with these two kind of areas around time and audiences that will help you find the most efficient way that you can respond to the situation. Nobody's going to have a perfect response here. It's about finding what is going to work best for you. So those are the kind of two dimensions that I would add when you're thinking about this question.
Okay, that's fab. I've had quite a lot of questions come through about how do you how do you focus on sort of trusts and major gifts right now? Like, is there something you should capitalize on with those particularly warm audiences? Should you, I know you touched on some of this within your session, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, so when we looked at reshaping all of our fundraising, and we decided that we would do our emergency appeal, the two people we had leading that project, one was on the mass side and one was on the high value side. So they were working hand in glove in terms of developing that. So that it kind of goes back to Joe's last point, get your teams working as efficiently as possible, because we knew that the emergency appeal was going to be needed in both spaces. So what that meant was that we could very quickly look at the messaging and what was going to work for the different audiences. The way we present it is different, but actually at its core, we know what we need to be asking. So I think that's really important, to get the organisation connected on the key message that we want to get out. I think the other thing is, the keep asking bit, it's not necessarily, I think, obviously many of your, for example, major donors will be going through their own thing. But, really do try and reach out to them, try and have the conversations with them around how you are affected. And that doesn't mean making the ask right now. We know that doesn't always work with major donors, but it's keeping them informed. And they know you're going through a crisis right now, so they want to hear how you're doing. So that is obviously going to be much easier with your existing donors. Where you've got really warm prospects, it's going to be easier. Where it's going to be more difficult is the colder prospects. So really focus in on your existing and your very warm prospects. I think as well, it is about leveraging the rest of the organisation. So we've worked really tightly as a team to understand where we can have the best influence. So if we think about government departments, so actually it's been the policy team that have been talking to DH about funding, not necessarily the people in our statutory team. It's been the chief operating officer have been liaising with NHS on stuff that we've been doing. So it's really drawing upon everyone in the organisation. And again, this is the time to get back to your trustees about why fundraising is so important, and really lean on them to support you to deliver some of this stuff.
Okay, fab. So on the flip side of that, Sonia and Joe, you're talking about, focus on your warm audience. But what if you didn't really have a fundraising program before COVID? Or what if you're super tiny, you're a really small charity, and you don't have a massive pool of people? Do you have any recommendations on how you should approach fundraising from scratch?
Yeah, that's tricky. I think it comes back to what we talked about relationship building. So when I work with charities who don't have an existing program in place, what we do is we try and understand, well, who are the audiences out there, and how can you add value for them? How can you build relationships? And it's the same process of building insight. And obviously we're in a very pressured time, and we don't have the luxury perhaps to develop a program like we normally would. I think if I was in a position of someone, working in an organisation that's very, very small and very, very limited in capacity and doesn't have many existing relationships, I would just try and look for what is the the optimal route to generate some initial responses and income. So it would probably be high value, and it will be looking to understand some of the audiences that Sonya was just talking about, like how can you build some relationships with them quite quickly. And I think it's not necessarily about making the ask immediately. It's about putting yourself front of mind, introducing yourself, and giving yourself the opportunity to understand what is it that what they're looking for in this situation. You know, what is it they need? What do they want to be doing? Who do they want to be supporting? How do they want to be seen by their customers or their, you know, networks? Who can they put you in touch with? You know, if you're talking about a kind of typically small charity, you might want to think very locally about relationships you can build quickly, like with local businesses. You know, what can you do with them, and what are they looking for? And also, I guess, how can you maybe build a tangible, powerful ask that you can sort of take to market straight away? So have a think about those kind of relationships where you can build. You've got the opportunity for a relatively high value ask quite quickly. I think you know, because looking at kind of lower value, kind of more sort of general public asks, you know, they're going to take that sort of program is going to take a long time to build, and obviously the returns take a long time to come back in. So that would be my thought, I think, in that situation.
Yeah, and to build on that, I think, you know, if we look at the traditional loyalty ladder, your advocates within those smaller organisations are the people who are already connected to that charity. So reach out to them, understand why they are connected to the charity. They might be a volunteer, they might be a trustee, and you know, see how you can leverage their contacts. I think, again, goes back to collaboration. Are there any other charities locally that you could be joining forces with? You know, who can you reach out to? And again, it's that thing of ask for help, you know, draw on resources from similar, there might be a similar, you know, say you're a local organisation delivering a particular service, you know, there might be a similar service going on in another town. You know, can you somehow reach out to that organisation to ask them how they're doing things? So you don't forget to ask for help.
Fab, thanks so much for that. So now I'm going to slightly change the question. I've had quite a few questions come through about how do you sort of not overwhelm your supporters with communications. You know, you might be planning something, then all of a sudden 2.6 comes out of nowhere, and you've also got to schedule that in. So how do you handle that? And secondly, second part of that question is, you know, a lot of the general public think that a lot of funds are going to the NHS charities or children in need, which is fab. But how do you vocalise that you're still really important and you don't seem like you've got sour grapes, shall we say?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I think in terms of the not overwhelming with messages, this does go back to a really good comms calendar. If you have not got a comms calendar, I'd really urge you to work across your teams to create one quite quickly. And then as you see things coming through, you're going to need to shift it around. There's no other way of doing it. So for us, we've actually launched new services during this period in response to the crisis. So we've had to prioritise some of that, and it's knocked out some of the fundraising, but obviously the emergency appeals important. So we've had to think about the sequencing of all of that. So it is not easy by any stretch, but you just need to keep going back to the comms calendar and keep shifting things around and piecing it together and work out, you know, you probably need to be meeting on a weekly basis, fundraising comms together to understand, and maybe even for your services people to understand, right, okay, what are the priorities over the next, you know, days, let alone weeks. It may sound inefficient, but that is going to produce the best results and people not feeling overwhelmed. I think what I would say is, yes, we don't want people to be overwhelmed, but keep asking. You know, people are at home, you know, there will be people that want to do something. So, you know, we probably can afford ourselves a bit more comms right now, but I agree, you know, we mustn't overwhelm. Oh, there was another point I was going to raise, and I can't decipher my writing, so I'm going to hand over to Joe in a minute. You might have some comments.
Okay, thanks, Sonia. I think those are really good points about planning your communications. I would also add, you know, if anything, the data tells us from the last few years, it's that charities and fundraising organisations that talk to their donors and prospects frequently do much better than those that go quiet. So if you're going to err on any side, I would definitely lean towards the talking more. The key to it is not making your communications and asks too similar to what they're receiving from everybody else and from other charities. So, and that's something I noticed a lot over the last few weeks is so many of the asks and so many of the communications were so similar in tone, similar in ask. And that, I think those are the kind of messages that overwhelm people. So keep thinking about how you can be unique, because everyone's going out with a message of, like, you know, our funding's in crisis, we need your help. So, like, think about how you can be unique. I would say maybe one way to do this, think about storytelling, think about really telling that personal story of an individual that people can connect to and they can empathize with. Those are the kind of things that will cut through and will generate response. And I think that's maybe something I've not seen enough from yet with the sector, is that really compelling storytelling that makes you connect to an individual. So try and bring those out and bring those to the forefront. And I think, you know, if you tell good stories, you won't overwhelm people. But as Sonia says, keep asking. I think that's, you know, the overwhelm thing is not the too much communication. You know, I'd much rather side on keep communicating rather than going quiet, because no one gets responses if you go quiet.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add, you know, the bit about sour grapes, and I can see someone has very helpfully made the comment about, you know, yes, we're talking a lot about keep asking, but why are we asking? And I think, you know, that's a really, really important point, is about being very clear, going back to the mission, going back to what we're delivering, you know, how we're affected by the crisis. I think that bit, if you remain true to that, that's important, because yes, there are those organisations that are responding to the crisis, but, you know, if you're a disability charity, environmental charity, an animal charity, people still care passionately about those causes. They still want you to thrive. They still want you to be there. So it is about having that dialogue with them to explain what you're going through right now. And so they're not going to mind you having that conversation with them.
Okay, that's great. I know we've still got loads and loads of questions that we haven't managed to get through. There was some about, particularly about legacies or bequests from an Australian participant, and also quite a lot from membership organisations. So we're not going to have time on this session to answer all of those. But as we've announced earlier, we are going to be setting up a Facebook chat group where we'll be able to carry on answering some of those questions. So I think Jenny can write in the chat room right now about what it's called. So we hope to see you there. Sorry, I'm just having some more tech issues. So I'll hand over to you, Juliet.
Lovely, thank you. Well, thank you all. That was absolutely awesome. What an amazing first virtual session we've had. So thank you so much, Joe, Sonia, and everybody else who's contributed. It'd be fantastic if you could tweet about today. Please use the hashtag IO Thursday, and tag the speakers and us, please, at Word of Joe, at TriviaDS, and at IOF London. That would just be fantastic. Next month, we have a panel session that will look at how charities are strategically planning the next 6 months. So we expect that to sell out really quickly as well. This session sold out in about 12 hours. So do keep an eye out for that and sign up. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Stay safe and well, and see you soon.